Today I want to show you the Victorinox Fibrox Pro chef's knife. I've been using this knife every day for around a month now, and I put it through some pretty rigorous testing which I'm going to show you in this video. This is my honest take on the good points, and it has a lot, as well as some of the bad points of this knife. Victorinox is an old and well-established knife manufacturer from Switzerland, founded in 1884. In fact, they're the original makers of the Swiss Army knife, and today they're still the sole supplier of multi-purpose knives to the Swiss Army. If you've ever used a Swiss Army knife, you know that they're purpose-built for durability. They don't chip and they don't rust. So Victorinox have a pretty good pedigree when it comes to making tough knives, which is ideal for a chef's knife. The profile of the knife takes from the classic chef's knife style. It has a wide blade and it's curved along the edge. That curved edge is ideal for rock chopping, and the wide blade is useful for scooping up chopped up meat and vegetables, as well as giving the blade an added level of stability. What I really like about this knife design though is the handle. It's a softer, more textured thermoplastic than you get on most knives, so it grips to your hand really well, and there's basically no slippage when you're using it. It's also really ergonomically designed, so it's super comfortable to hold, and it just has a great all-round feel, quite different from any other knife. The handle is also super lightweight, and the blade is much thinner than you might get on some knives, so that reduces the weight as well. Having a thinner blade might make it harder to cut through really large vegetables than it would be with a thicker or more robust blade, but honestly for 95% of cutting tasks in the kitchen it's really not going to make any difference. It's still plenty strong enough and it does feel good and sturdy. It also feels a lot lighter than most chef's knives when you're holding it, but I wanted to properly test that out, so I weighed it against 3 other chef's knives, all with the same 8-inch length. One was a forged knife with a full bolster, one was a forged knife with a half bolster, and one was a stamped knife, which is the same type of knife as the Victorinox. The Victorinox is so much lighter, it's ridiculous. It's even 20% lighter than the other stamped knife, and the width of the blade on the Victorinox is way larger than that one. I think this is the lightest, good quality chef's knife you can buy. There might be cheap knives out there with super thin blades using low quality steel, but when it comes to a good quality chef's knife, I think the Victorinox is the lightest. If you think there are any lighter chef's knives out there, please do let me know in the comments, because I will buy it and I'll test it. One of the reasons for that lightness is that this is a stamped blade. Effectively, it's been cookie cut out of a giant sheet of steel, as opposed to being a forged steel knife, which you can recognize from the chunk of metal where the blade meets the handle, which is called the bolster. Stamped steel knives don't have this bolster. Now look, it's pretty common to find that knives at this price range are stamped steel rather than forged, so I really don't see it as much of a problem or as a negative against the Victorinox, and it does help to make it super lightweight. The knife has a 15-degree double bevel edge, and testing it straight out of the factory, it really is a good sharp knife, and it has a much better finished edge than certainly many of the knives at this price range, but I'd even say knives at higher price ranges as well. It really is finished very nicely. The knife uses a steel called X50 CRMO V15, which is the exact same steel used in my $170 Wusthof knife. It's a great steel known for its durability and rust resistance. And the Victorinox has a HRC or hardness rating of 56, which is pretty standard in Western style chef's knives. Typically you want a Western style chef's knives to be anywhere between 56 and 58 HRC. That's going to give it a good balance between durability, and for that it needs some flexibility in the knife so it doesn't crack at the edge, so it doesn't want to be too hard, but it's also hard enough to be able to retain and hold a good sharp edge for a reasonable length of time. Now, to make sure you keep a knife at this kind of hardness in good order, you will need to hone it quite often, ideally every day that you actually use the knife, but after every few uses is probably going to be okay as well. That's going to help keep the edge of the knife aligned for longer, keeping it sharper for longer as well. Eventually though, maybe after say 6 months to a year, depending on how much you use the knife, you will need to properly sharpen the knife to bring back that razor sharp factory edge finish. Now the best way to sharpen your knife is usually by using a whetstone at home and doing it yourself, or Instead, you can use an external knife sharpening service. There might be one local to you, or there are even ones where you can send off your knives and they'll sharpen them, deliver them back to your house. Another large benefit of this steel is it's extremely rust resistant. Now, Victorinox already have a really good reputation for making durable rust resistant knives, and a Swiss Army knife wouldn't be any good for using in the outdoors if it rusts as soon as it touches water. So I've got high expectations for this knife. And to test that theory, I did something that you should basically never do with any of your kitchen knives. I soaked the knife in water for around 2 hours, and then to keep it in a moist environment, I wrapped it in a wet towel for a further 24 hours. I did this immediately after using it because in theory, the protective layer created by the chromium, which is the element that stops kitchen knives from rusting within the steel, should be at its weakest directly after being used. And it's not just a test for the rust resistance of the steel, but also to see if the handle disforms or has any warping as an effect of the moisture as well. 24 hours later, I checked the knife and it was completely fine. No spots of rust, no damage, handle intact. As expected, this knife can easily survive a real good dousing in water. Now look, the Victorinox is a brilliant chef's knife. I think it's the lightest chef's knife that I've ever used, but it's not my favourite chef's knife at this price range. Before you buy any chef's knife, you need to check out my video here comparing the best chef's knives at $50. There's a great selection there, and I choose my favourite chef's knife, which I think is easily comparable with knives that are double to triple the price, and who wouldn't want that?